Hello and welcome to A Gypsy's Kiss, the vlog. I'm Shelley Carney.
And I'm Toby Eunice. Stick with us for a few seconds, and we've got some really sexy stuff for you today.
And we're back. So last week, didn't we say something about we were going to discuss the most important word in the poem?
Well, last week we did say we were going to discuss the most important word, but as we discovered in the intervening week, we actually have two different opinions on what the most important word in the poem is. So we're actually going to discuss what we think of as our opinions on the matter, what the most important word is. But I want to remind everybody of something. This is something that Forrest said in one of his most recent posts on Dale's blog, and I think it was in response to an email that someone had written him. What he said was, many are giving serious thought to the clues of my poem, but only a few are in tight focus with a word that is key. The treasure may be discovered sooner than I anticipated. I'm not sure I agree with the last part of that sentence, whether or not the treasure will be found sooner than he anticipated, because I think he anticipates 100, maybe even 1,000 years, and I think that's where we're still at. Although all of us are trying harder to make sure that doesn't exactly happen. But he did say there is a word that is key, and that triggered some additional research on our part, and we started looking at it, and Shelley and I actually decided to look at this separately so that we would come up, to see if we would come up with two different words that we thought were key. Now, you have to look at it from the perspective of what does key mean. Key, in a traditional sense, is what unlocks something. So it is our sense that this key word, if correctly interpreted, has the potential to unlock the clues in the poem. So why don't we start with yours?
All right. So I chose the word halt from Begin It Where Warm Waters Halt.
Why don't you tell everybody?
Here is why. Yeah. It doesn't rhyme. It's the only word that sticks out because it doesn't rhyme. It doesn't rhyme with walk, which is in the schematic that of the rhyme scheme. It should have rhymed with walk, and it doesn't. So if you're not going to rhyme anyway, why not use a simpler word like end, stop, cease, yield, or something like that? Or use a word that does rhyme, that means basically the same thing, bulk. So it's spelled the same, and I looked it up online, and it does show it as a rhyming word with walk. So he could have used bulk. Or we can go to the other meaning of halt, which is a temporary or optional stop for a train. Now, that's mostly used in the UK, especially in Ireland, but it is another meaning of the word halt, a train stop.
The other thing about halt is that in the military, it is a command, right? When during formation marching, when the word halt is spoken, everything comes to a complete stop after the organization of steps so that everybody's aligned. But it does have a very specific meaning in the military, and that is you stop. Whatever you were doing, you stop. If you're coming up to a sentry point and that sentry shouts out at you, halt, you come to a complete stop. You put yourself at risk of being shot. So it does have some meaning in the military sense as well. And as we know, Forrest spent 20 years in the military, so he could do that. But my question is, if part of your logic is that it doesn't rhyme with walk, then why isn't walk the word that is unique to your opinion on the matter?
Well, walk is being a very simple word. It's probably the simplest word you can use for forward movement. You know, he could have said amble or stroll or something else, but walk being the very most simple word that you could use for walk, move forward.
I like it. Interesting. Halt. Most important word. So that's key, right? We agree that it's key, and that if you can understand why he chose halt or what halt means, it has the potential to unlock the poem.
Possibly. Moving on.
Possibly. Okay, so did you ever notice that whenever Forrest takes a picture with you, he smiles, and when he takes a picture with me, he doesn't smile? Starting to feel funny about that. Anyway, so my key word or most important word in the poem is the word brown, from put in below the home of brown, which is the third complete sentence in the poem, and what I believe to be the third complete clue, as I point out here. So it's the only word in the poem that, exclusive of the first words in each line, which traditionally are capitalized in poetry, it's the only one that's capitalized exclusive of those first words in each of the lines. And if you look at it, the first words that are in each of the lines, there's a lot of as and if and
just.
Exactly. So it does have some value. To me, then, at first I thought, well, it just makes it important. But then the more and more I thought about it, I realized, well, it not only makes it important, it makes it a proper noun. That means it belongs, it's the name of something. It could be a reference to a person. Because although you might make brown trout, for example, capitalized, it isn't, and at that point it is in combination a brown trout, a proper name. There's only one place where brown capitalized is proper, and that's when it refers to a European surname, Brown. It's in the single shortest sentence in the poem. That also makes it the most visible in our schema, the most visible and like a clue in the poem. It's short, put in below the home of Brown. It's completely descriptive, it's very short, and it happens to have that capitalized word in it. So to me, that is the key word, but there's a big but, for lack of a better way to describe this, the big brown but.
We told you it would be sexy.
So the problem with the big brown but is that when I first did an analysis, this is my whiteboard analysis of put in below the home of Brown. So the first thing that I worked at is which of the 64 definitions of home did he choose? And I decided upon the one that made the most sense from the perspective of our schema, our take on the poem, is that it's a place where something flourishes, is commonly found, or originates. So the indication to me was then it's some sort of thing. Now, I'll qualify this in saying that they both require longevity, right? There's got to be some longevity. And as you can see here, I actually crossed out person. I thought, nah, it's not a person. It's a place, maybe a thing, and I started working from that perspective. I took that back because I started reading up on what exactly proper nouns versus proper names are, and that's when I came to the conclusion and here's the big but, it has to be the combination of two things. It has to be a person or a thing plus a place with longevity. And we've had this conversation before. Longevity includes like something of geologic proportion, something that you can look at 1,000 years. So, if I were to talk about John Brown, the Civil War, a character in the Civil War, you would know that we'd end up in Missouri, et cetera, et cetera. If I were to talk about Barnum Brown, the paleontologist, that we'd end up in eastern Wyoming. So there is, and those mountains in which he did his research in eastern Wyoming are going to be there in 100 years. And they may still have his name, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all these locations in our search area that have the name, are used, the name Brown, including a Rio Marron, which is the Spanish word for brown. But there are also things associated with it, and some of them are relatively straightforward. Brown bear, a brown drake, which is a mayfly that surfaces on Silver Creek once a year and is a big thing amongst fly fishermen. The beeweed, which is all over the Southwest and which was used, it's not a particularly fragrant or tasty flower, but it happens to produce a brown ink that was used in making some of the Puebloans and some of the Anasazi pottery. Or it could be like we assumed in Pilar, a pigment that comes from the brown surface, the brown patina that's on the rock there. So I think the key to the word brown, aside from the fact that it's capitalized, that it is likely a person for which something of geologic or historic longevity has meaning. So the key is to find out who Brown was, not where it was, but who Brown was, and why, let's say, Brown's Hole was named. I think it's not Brown's Hole anymore. It's Brown's
Park.
Brown's Park was named Brown's Park. Why was it named Brown? And I think if you can figure that piece out, and it makes sense in the context of how Forrest thinks. You know, Barnum Brown struck me as interesting because he did research in Wyoming, and he was a paleontologist. It had historic proportions. It had geologic, well, in their case, paleontological longevity. But the problem is his research was done in an area of Wyoming that's under 5,000 feet. And technically not actually in the Rocky Mountains. It's far, far to the east of Wyoming. So those are our opinions, but then you gave me some pushback on this.
Well, and I was watching some of the videos of other searchers, and they think the most important word is treasures. So there's a lot of controversy on the particular word. So we are going back a couple of weeks to when we talked about how Fenn architected the poem. And now in a case of an architect, if you were to ask an architect what's the most important part of this structure, what would he say? Would he say the foundation, the walls, the windows, the doors? You can't really have a house without all of those things. So the poem is a complete structure that we need to look at as such. And every part is needed, but the word that Fenn may be referring to is the context in which the poem is set.
So let me see if I have this right. So your opinion on the matter, well, and let me paraphrase. We can't eliminate the idea of context from our analysis of the poem by just focusing on one word. And when I say that one word is important, I think of it in terms of as a key to unlocking the poem. You're saying that maybe it has more potential as establishing the context in which the poem was written. Is that
or in which it needs to be deciphered in order to find the correct place.
Okay, so let's go with your example.
All right. So say the poem's context is sex, right?
Wait. We're talking poems, we're talking West, we're talking Rocky Mountains. How did you come up with?
Well, just take a look at it. If it was written about perhaps a man explaining sex. So, as I have gone alone in there, begin it where warm waters halt, take it in the canyon down, put in below the home of Brown, just heavy loads and water high. I've done it tired and now I'm weak. He's explaining sexual encounter. So how that fits with a treasure hunt, well, that's...
Oh, am I blushing?
up to you to decide.
Sexual encounter, huh? So I've gone, well, we're going to take it in the canyon down.
Anyway, so I'm saying context is important. And everybody has said this is a very interpretive poem, and you can look at it in many different ways. This is just one way you can look at it.
So I guess the challenge for me is come up with a context as creative, because I must say that is pretty creative. Context that works with us the next time we're out in the field. Mm-hmm. Because if all I'm thinking about is sex, we're not going to get anything done.
Oh, well.
Okay.
Moving on.
Wait, yeah, let me just... Okay, so I like it.
Yeah.
I didn't know it was going to have this effect on me. But... So, okay, so based on that, we had to make a decision about where we're headed this weekend. We're taking a 3-day trip And in this case, Shelley's husband, Kevin, is going with us. And we had decided that we were going to do a recon, but we hadn't quite decided where. So here's what I'm going to do. I marked on our version of the Thrill of the Chase map 3 areas where I thought it would be reasonable to recon this weekend.
Here's the New Mexico state line, and I'm seeing circles above. So I thought we were only looking in New Mexico.
It's your positive influence, right? So you've influenced me to consider other locations that fit our schema of the drive from Santa Fe. So there's a couple of locations on there that aren't in New Mexico that he could have driven to in one and returned in one day from Santa Fe. So what you need to do is we got this weekend. We know for us it's a 3, maybe 4-day weekend because Kevin has taken time off. What I'd like you to do is pick one.
Well,
Where are we going this weekend?
all right. In that case, I think we should go here.